Hello there, fellow humans, and welcome to 2022, and also the third week of the auction today. Well, it was already yesterday, but anyway. Some tanks are already gone, but that doesn't really matter because you would have overpaid for those anyway. Now, obviously, what was in there? You had a T-42, which was certainly a very great buy. You had the Skoda, which was pointless. The Gravedigger Kennedy 1 and T-22 medium. There's just no point in getting the Gravedigger, the Kennedy 1. The Kennedy was a good tank, but still it's a tier 9, so it is a good tank. I wouldn't say it's worth buying though. T-22, it's very weird to play, so while it is a good tank, it is still quite a weird tank. The T-27 just doesn't really work that well in Blitz. Now, that doesn't matter though, because I want to focus on two tanks today that might not be the best, but they are still quite interesting. And no, it's not the STG, because the STG sucks dick. It's also not the T-4485 or the Tankstein, because they're tier 7, so they are already irrelevant. For maybe 3k, if you want them, you can consider them, and you also can consider liking and subscribing if you want to. And obviously the 5A is a complete piece of trash, so just ignore it. Now, what I want to talk about today is the M4 and the T-26. Now, obviously, if you already have the T-54E2 or the AMX M49 or the Chimera, you can pretty much ignore this video, unless you might think you want something a bit different to those tanks, because obviously they're the best ones. So now let's go into the battle with the T-26E5, and all you really have to know about this thing is that it isn't the T-54. Now, it is slightly worse, obviously. However, it is also a lot cheaper, so at that point, you know, if it's sold for 5k, and the T-54 is sold for like 10k, it's not half as bad, obviously. So in that sense, the price kind of makes sense a bit. Obviously, in the grand scheme of things, if you can't afford this kind of tank, if you, like, you know, if you'd rather want to get something different, obviously the MX M49 and the T-42 are the first pick, and so is the Chimera for medium tanks. And how does it feel? It's funny how the STG pretends to have turret armor, and then it still has a massive cupola that you can compare easily. Like, what the hell is that tank? The STG might as well be the worst rate in the game at this point. It has nothing besides the alpha damage. Okay, now, I also have nothing in terms of team. Great, but I think it's like 2.3k DPM that this thing has, which is pretty good. I mean, it's more of a buff medium tank than a heavy tank, which makes it quite interesting, because obviously it combines the good of both worlds, not the best, but it combines the good of both worlds with armor, and the gun, and the mobility. And it's also better than the Action X, so that's a bonus. Now, while the Action X does have more DPM, yes, you can't always use that DPM, and I'd rather have a bit more armor and a bit more alpha damage than have pointless DPM that I can't use because I have 90 alpha damage. What are you doing, mate? Okay, now the problem is obviously we have three interesting people on our team, these guys. So we're gonna have to try to make this work somehow, despite them. Blitz is not always. Sometimes it's winning despite the team rather than with the team, and that's one of those battles. Now, obviously, you don't want to get into a one-on-one fight with the Action X because it does have more DPM, so that's not really the best of ideas. You also don't want to show your hull too much because it can be quite vulnerable. The turret, however, it's pretty much a Pershing turret. It's a hardened Pershing turret, so it's quite strong. I mean, the enemies, they kind of, I don't know what they're doing. They're just failing to kill an IU and a Tiger P. So that's less on we being good. That's more on them not doing anything. But the IU is going to go down. KB4 is a tank destroyer now. Cool. Let's try to take out the Action X here. That'd be very useful and very good. There's, yep, STG is like that down there. I'm going to fight them even though he can't hit anything. That's not great. But he can't pay anything. But that doesn't mean that he won't. So let's see what we can do here. ISU is going to hold this angle here. See if he runs in, track him. Use the... Nope, never mind. Not use the adrenaline, or maybe use the adrenaline if he goes forward again. Use the Tiger. There we go. Play it smart. 1,000 damage, 1,000 damage, 2,000 damage. That's not too bad so far. You can see how this tank can work. You know, if you're a good player, if you're a decent player, you can work this tank beautifully. That is what matters here. It might not be as baseline strong as the T4, E2, or a MX-M49, but it does have the ability to surprise you. And that, for 5k gold, if not even less, is quite good. Now, where the hell did the STG go? I'd like to know that. He can't pen anything, but he can pen me if he is lucky. 225 APCR pen isn't really nice, because this thing has 10 degrees of gun depression, has very good penetration as well. It has pretty much everything that you want. The mobility is more than a regular heavy, less than a normal medium, so it's basically a direct heavium. And yeah, the STG is dead now. Congratulations on buying a trash tank. There we go, and that's 3.7k damage in a pretty good tank. It's good. It's not great, but it's good. And that's the good thing about this tank, you know. It's not the best. It's a bit unsuspecting, but as you can see, 3,700 damage and like 1,100 assistance isn't even an ace. So there are people doing really well in this tank. So, if you have some money left over, if it is left at the end of the auction for like 5k, 4.5k, even 4k, I'd say this can be a very nice addition to your garage. What also can be a very nice addition to your garage is the M4 Ravioli. However, the difference between the T26 and the M4 is the T26 is for everyone. This one only recommended to good players. So when I'm alone against two enemy medium and light tanks, well, I mean, it's a T49, so it's not a light tank, it's an abomination, which can pen me with HE, I think, through the sides, certainly not the front, but the sides. So I don't want to go too aggressive here. I'm going to become a bushman and sit in here now. 350 alpha damage, I think. Yeah, it's pretty good if you know how to use it. The T26 doesn't really need a user manual because it's the basic of basic tanks, you know, it just does everything. It can work in any position, it can do everything. This thing, not so much. It doesn't have any armor. It's an M4 at tier 8, so yeah, of course it doesn't have any armor. However, it does have quite an interesting gun at quite high alpha damage. It's either 350 or 320 or something like that. If it is 320, I'm severely disappointed. But that's still quite decent. Now, in WoT PC, that's I believe 390, which is... oh boy. It's an insanely interesting tank in WoT PC. But in Blitz, it's not so much, because obviously paper tanks do need more space. And Blitz doesn't have that much space. As you can see with that Borsig getting completely wrecked. Because he can't camp as well in Blitz as he can in WoT PC. Obviously. Now, what we're going to do here, it's just not that much faster than the T54, not the T4, the T26, so that's kind of one of the downsides of this tank, that it's not really that mobile, compared to, I don't know, a Pershing or something like that, which is just a bit faster, and also a Panther, which I can just out-trade, which means, as long as I keep him trapped, as long as he can't hit me, he's dead. Which is quite interesting. Now, obviously the Chimera is miles better than this tank. That's not even a discussion at this point. The Chimera is a lot better. I'd say the Centurion 5.1 is also a tiny bit better as well. Certainly can be considered. This thing is interesting because it's essentially, it doesn't play by the rules. And it also does quite well in 2 minutes, just like that. That's... well, about 2,000 damage already, 2.4k damage, 100,000 credits in 2 minutes, which is quite good. Now, again, this thing, 4.5k, 5k, can certainly be worth considering if you are a good player and if you got some gold to waste. So, yeah. However, my recommendations, obviously, if you have the T42, if you have the AMX M49, if you have the Chimera, yeah, you're done. If you have those, you got everything you need. Everything else is an extra that you might get. And yeah, you might also like and subscribe. But that's it. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Goodbye.